Hello everyone and welcome back to Real Life Struggles. I actually have been trying for a while to release a video because I realized I haven't released one in a while. So I figured the easiest thing to do would be a low effort reacting to Young Earth Creationist memes video. I could get that out, you could enjoy it, then I could sit down and plan out a big video. Unfortunately, every single time I tried, something went wrong. So I sat down and I scripted out a video, and now we're doing the first in a series of videos that I like to call Don't Listen to This Guy. Our first one, mainly because he's one of the worst offenders, and the last time I made a video on him, I got over 1,000 views. I think I'm up to 2 now. Is Kent Hovind, Dr. Dino. We'll get to that later. So why shouldn't you listen to this man they call Dr. Dino? Well, he calls himself Dr. Dino. No one else calls him Dr. Dino. Why shouldn't you listen to him? Well, for one, he's a tax cheat. Kent Hovind, an American evangelist, was convicted of tax evasion and related crimes after he failed to pay payroll and income taxes despite a very lucrative business, which is known as Creation Science Evangelism. He was sentenced to 10 years in federal prison. The Hovinds were also charged with structuring cash withdrawals to avoid reporting requirements. A lot of times that involves moving around less than $10,000, because anything over $10,000 gets automatically reported by banks. All right, so let me read some more details. Kent Hovind and his wife Jo were found guilty of failing to withhold payroll taxes from their employees and failing to file related tax documents with the IRS between 2001 and 2003. Hovinds were charged with structuring over $1.5 million in cash withdrawals from AmSouth Bank in increments of less than $10,000. Like I said, other charges. Kent Hovind is also charged with obstructing the administration of internal revenue laws. He was convicted on 58 counts and sentenced to 10 years in prison. All right, so Hovind moved to Pensacola, Florida in 1989, started a ministry called Creation Science Evangelism. He built Dinosaur Adventure Land, a small theme park, and a fossil museum. Spoke at lots of churches, teaches the universe is less than 6,000 years old, or is 6,000 to 10,000 years old. Hovind bluntly stated in his lectures and on his website he did not believe in paying taxes to the government. His ministry employed people but never withheld taxes. He never registered as a tax-exempt religious organization, so he was supposed to pay taxes. Upon learning about his anti-tax philosophy and attempts to evade paying taxes, administrators at nearby Pensacola Christian College reported him to the IRS and forbade him from working with students. In 1996, attempted to collect back taxes from 89 to 85 to escape responsibility for paying taxes. He filed bankruptcy, which was rejected. It says that even though he claims he received no income, he owned a house that he payments on, was able to send his kids to a $5,000 per year Christian school, paid $4,000 to install an AC, agreed to pay the IRS. So Hovind agrees to pay the IRS $432 for 5 years. In May 98, he made another effort to not pay taxes. Documents argue that they had been misled, forced to sign the government documents and specify the payment schedule, therefore did not owe the government. They also renounced their citizenship. So besides being a Young Earth Creationist and a science denier, he's a sovereign citizen. So he's really getting the bingo card of stupidity here. 2002, once again delinquent on his taxes, attempted to sue the IRS for harassment. Yeah, don't fight City Hall, none of the works. April 2004, they raided his business, did not have a business license or tax exempt status, showed that he had more than $100 million in various accounts, June 3, the IRS filed a tax lien of $500,000 against Hovind and his son Eric, who helped his father hide it. See, it's kind of funny. Eric Hovind is the same type of ignorant Young Earth Creationist that his father is. But for the most part, he's kind of a polite guy. I mean, he's wrong, but he's not the jerk that his father is. Right, 2006, he was charged in district court in the Northern District of Pensacola, 12 counts of not paying employee taxes, 45 counts of smirking the banking industry for evading reporting requirements by making withdrawals under $10,000. At the trial, he tried to argue that the 30 people who worked for him were missionaries and not employees. That didn't go over too well. And he was convicted. So what was the impact? Hovind's conviction was embarrassing to the American creationist movement because Hovind was one of its most visible figures. Unfortunately, he still is, which is why I'm making this video. No one should listen to him. His deplorable demeanor reflected very badly on the creationist movement as a whole and tended to reinforce the stereotype already associated with modern creationists. Yeah, they're anti-science and have a long view of the Bible. Hovind's controversial statements and divisive tactics also contributed to the 2005 schism of the largest international creationist organization's answers in Genesis. We'll cover that later because I'm pretty sure I'll do one of these about that. Okay. So, all right. Now, let's see. What does the Bible have to say about taxes? Well, here's one. The phrase "render to Caesar what is Caesar's" comes from the Bible, specifically the Gospels. Mark 12:17, Luke 20:25, and Matthew 23:21. It's a well-known saying Jesus used in response to a question about paying taxes to the Roman government. Now, whatever you may think about the American government, which I'm only bringing up because A, I'm an American, and B, Hovind is an American, so that's government he's against. They're nowhere near as horrible as the Roman government was, and Jesus still said that they should pay their taxes. All right, he was asked by religious leaders if it was lawful to pay taxes to the Roman. They wanted to trap him, either making him seem disloyal to God if he said to pay the taxes, or disloyal to Caesar if he said not to. Jesus asked to see a Roman coin. When they asked who's on the coin, they replied, Caesar's. Jesus said, render to Caesar what is Caesar's, and to God what is God's. It can be seen as a statement about respecting both civil and religious authority. Okay, let's look at the next verse. Romans 13:1-7. Let every person be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except by God, and those that exist are in place by God. So then, the one who resists authority resists the ordinance which is from God, and those who resist will receive condemnation on themselves. For rulers are not a cause of terror for a good deed, but for bad conduct. So do you want not to be afraid of authority? Do what is good, and you will have praise from it. For it is God's servant to you for what is good. But if you do what is bad, be afraid, because it does not bear the sword to no purpose. For it is God's servant, the one who avenges for punishment on the one who does what is bad. Therefore, this is the important part, it is necessary to be in subjugation. For because of this, you also pay taxes, for the authorities are servants of God, busily engaged in this very thing. Pay to everyone what is owed. Pay taxes to whom taxes are due. Pay customs duties to whom customs duties are due. Pay taxes to whom respect is due. Pay honor to whom honor is due. So in other words, evading taxes is against the Bible. All right. Number 2 reason why nobody should listen to Ken Hovind is he is a wife abuser. He was arrested in Alabama on July 30th, 2021 for allegedly throwing Cindy Lincoln to the ground. September 20, 2021, he was found guilty of domestic violence, sentenced to 1 year in jail, which would be suspended following 30 days in county jail, ordered $500 in order to pay restitution. Here's our proof. Here's our paper. Dr. Dino gets 30 days in jail and then rolled jail. He sheltered a known playground lover of people that play on the playgrounds, and welcomed him to Dinosaur Adventure Land. This person, known as Christopher Link Jones, is a known offender who was welcome to stay despite Christopher Link Jones being accused of assaulting a lover of the playground at the playground, or at the park. An arrest warrant shows Jones charged with criminal sexual conduct with a minor under 14. Hope I didn't get any denials. Jones was previously convicted of battery and naughty acts on playground lovers in California. According to the sheriff, arrest warrants were issued between November 5th, 2016 and 2017. All right, so we have the article, Creationist Theme Park Child Charge. Here's him. Arrested in South Carolina. And here is what Kent Hovind had to say about it. I've known Chris for many years, Hovind told the Daily Beast. He gets accused of things all the time, but everybody gets today in court. I don't know the details on it. Yeah, I'm sorry. When you run a park for children, even if the dude's your best friend, and especially when he's been accused multiple times of doing things, you don't let that person near children. Former workers, some of whom lived at the park, have accused Hovind of enabling a culture of impunity for Jones and for other close friends who allegedly abused drugs, stole money, and killed a dog. Jeez. Former residents told the Daily Beast they distanced themselves from Hovind after he arranged for Jones to share a bed with an 11-year-old. No. Even if the person has never been accused or convicted of loving playground lovers, you don't let a grown man sleep in the same bed as an 11-year-old unless it's his uncle or his father. Sorry. How people here react to that is their decision. He's got a right to wrestle with the kid if he wants, and you've got a right to say, I'm not getting around Chris. Yeah, I didn't read through this article when I was researching. It's just getting worse. Daily Beast. The boy's mother told the Daily Beast Jones' arrest in South Carolina was related to his son. Unfortunately, no one else was arrested that should have been arrested. He and Hovind have blamed the past cases on political persecution. Yeah, because the government makes up diddly young people in order to persecute you. Sorry. Jones claims he gave the footage to InfoWars founder Alex Jones, prompting the government forces to pursue charges against him. He got a job there, videotaped a bunch of stuff, and they wanted him in prison. All right. Let's move on. Okay, back to Kent Hovind. Another reason that I am not a fan of Kent Hovind and believe that you should not listen to him is his extreme King James only stance. I'll start off by saying I don't have a problem if the King James version is the version of the Bible that you want to use. If you choose to use the King James version, that's fine. Now, why anybody wants to use the 1611 authorized King James version that was written in English, well, actually, it was translated 400 years ago, but the English that they used was already archaic because they wanted to sound cool at the time that they translated it. So now we're looking at probably 500-year-old English, which most of the time is not understandable. And also, the other issue is that a lot of words that were in the original languages of the Bible, they had no translation for it in the 1600s. We have been able to translate more words and find more updated information. But if that's what you want to choose, that's fine. But when you start pushing the idea that it's the only version of the Bible that anybody should read and it's the most accurate version of the Bible, that's just patently false. There are hundreds, maybe not. There are plenty of things that are wrong with the King James translation that make it not the most accurate translation. One I said before, there's just words that they transliterated because they had no idea what they said. And there's also words that they refer to as false friends, where basically the word translates to something in English, but we just don't use that English word the same way that people do now. I mean, if you look at the word gay, if you go back to the 50s, with like the Flintstones, they're a gay old family. Well, they weren't two moms and two dads. They were happy. Gays and were happy. Then it came to the meaning that it meant when I was growing up, which was, two moms or two dads. And then in my brother's generation, it became a meaning of stupid. Like somebody's like, hey, we should go paint flowers on the side of a tree. You're like, that's kind of gay. And now with Zoomers, it probably means something else. And the same thing happened with a lot of words in the King James translation. They just don't mean what they mean anymore. But this claim
through the centuries, where man is always responsible to the Creator, and in 1611, I think God not inspired but preserved His Word in the translation, in the collection of everything, into what became known as today the King James Bible, which at the time was just simply called the Bible, or the authorized version. Did the guys know they were doing it? Probably not. Did Moses know he was inspired of God to say what he said? I don't know. Did Balaam's jackass know he was inspired of God when he spoke to Balaam in the book of Numbers? God can speak through a rock or a tree. Jesus said, these stones will cry out if these children don't quit their praising me. So you don't have to know you're inspired of God to be inspired of God. God can cause anything to do whatever He wants it to do. So the point would be, God chose in the 1600s, I think, to finish and to put the word now into English, knowing that's going to be the language of the world one day, which it is today. And with 7.3 billion people on the planet, almost all international business meetings get together and they talk in English. You have to go English. All the pilots have to learn English, which is kind of funny. Some of the mistakes they make as they fly in. That's another story. Point being, I have come to the conclusion, and that's why I stick with the King James, that is where God preserved it. And those guys can duke it out. Gil and James can duke it out. And I'd love to see James give a specific answer instead of saying, you're lying. Okay, well, you guys take care of that. My stand is very simple and very clear. God had to give us His word someplace. Where is it? Are we still digging through the trash heaps looking for the fragments to find out what it says? God told Noah to come into the ark in the King James. I can understand that. Come in. That means God's in there. Come on, Noah, let's go for a ride. All the other versions, including the New King James, say go into the ark. Now, there's probably a couple of reasons for that. One, apologize. In order to get that little C with the circle around it, copyright, which equals S with two lines through it, dollars, in order to get that copyright, they have to have some changes from the other one. King James never copyrighted his. Anybody can print as many King James Bibles as you want. You can do that right now. Right now, go print 1 million of them. No problem. It's never been copyrighted. All these other versions have that little C in the front, and people do things and they say used by permission from. Why do you got permission to quote the Bible? Come on. This is insane. So that's, I think, 1 Timothy 6:10, the love of money is the root of all evil.
All right, I think that about covers it. So, in review, he believes that the only way anyone should read the Bible is to first learn English. Now, here's the thing. I don't live in America right now. I'm actually living in China. I've been here quite a while. I run into more people that only speak Mandarin than people that speak Mandarin and English. So in order for someone to find the saving knowledge of Jesus, they first have to learn English. We don't have to bother translating the Bible into a language people can read. The English-speaking people are the lucky ones. The claim about copyright, let's look at that a minute, because I want to say I have heard somebody cover that before. All right, so we have here, the King James Bible is not subject to copyright in the UK. However, because of letters patent issued by the Crown, only the Queen's printer may print, publish, and distribute within the UK and its overseas territories. The KJV is still restricted by copyright. One of the common misconceptions about the King James is that it's universally public domain work, something many thought is a feature of its superiority to modern copyrighted translations. Unlike the KJV, some modern translations are public domain worldwide. Special printing rights were given to the King's printer, ensuring that only authorized printers could publish it within England and later the UK. To be clear, the KJV has been treated as public domain in most countries outside the UK due to international standards regarding the age of the work. Something can only be considered to be the public domain if it's public domain in the country of origin. The Crown does not attempt to enforce perpetual copyright over the KJV in foreign countries. Blah, 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 blah. If the Crown wanted to enforce abroad, it would face significant legal hurdles. So, partially. What else? Oh, another thing you said. Talking about money, love of money being the root of all evil. Now, here's the thing. If they were selling Bibles for like $500 a piece in order to get the most amount of money they could out of things, then I would kind of agree with them. But translations cost money. You have to pay people who work for you to make a translation. Do you really think the people that translated the King James Bible did it for free? I really doubt it. They must have paid them. The Crown must have paid them. So asking for money to print something is not the love of money. It's getting paid for your work. I mean, since Ken Hovind likes to throw Bible verses around, how about Deuteronomy 24:15? You are to pay his wages each day before sunset for these 4 and 10 running. Otherwise, you may cry out to the Lord against you, and you will be guilty of sin. So yeah, you should pay people for working for you. And also, yes, we should be looking up fragments and stuff because God did not preserve the Bible in English. He would have preserved it in Hebrew, Aramaic, and Greek. Those were the original languages that the Bible was written in. Anything after that is just a translation. Translators can make mistakes, which is why we need the most up-to-date and authentic copies of the Bible in order to translate. All right, so number 5. Despite his love of the King James Bible, he doesn't seem to know it very well. I have heard him on multiple occasions. Unfortunately, I have to watch a lot of this guy in order to make videos and stay up to date in the Young Earth Creationism arguing field, which isn't too up to date. It's about 20 or 30 years old. But anyway, he's all the time cherry picking, misquoting Bible verses. And since he doesn't bother to actually learn, any Greek or Hebrew or anything, he just reads the Bible in English. He doesn't even know the name Yahweh, the Hebrew name for God. Here, that's it.
To Hovind, does the second law of thermodynamics apply to Yahweh? If so, how is it not degraded out of existence? If not, why are creations affected?
Does the second law of thermodynamics, which means everything is tending toward disorder, does that apply to God? I'm not sure who Yahweh is, but does the God of the Bible? No. If so, how can Yahweh, being replaced thousands of times with Lord by the translators, be explained? Well, when you're changing from Hebrew to English, you replace all of the words, not just Yahweh. You replace them all. And I'd be careful about using the word Yahweh. I'm not sure who that is. Might want to do a study on that. Surely Yahweh dictated his name to the prophets, and they wrote YHWH. Well, then why are you putting YAHWEH? How do you know it's an A and an E? Since there were no vowels, why not an I and an O or a U? You don't know. So you may have the wrong one. Daniel writes in, Kent, I have a point of interest. I always hear the blasphemers in movies say Yahweh. They always say Jesus, or I never hear the blasphemers say Yahweh. I hear them say Jesus or Jesus Christ. The blasphemers in movies. Good point. Now, Gail Ripplinger has a section, I think, in one of her books about Yahweh being actually a name for Satan. I don't know if it's a German made it up or something, because we don't know the vowels. YHWH. And people say, well, the Hebrew doesn't have a J, so it can't be Jesus. Well, the Hebrew doesn't have an A, B, C, D, E, F, or G either. Okay, duh. Come on. So God in his wisdom decided nobody comes here unless they're perfect. And since none of us are perfect, we're all doomed to miss it. But God in his justice, in his justice, he has to condemn us. But in his mercy and love, he provided another way. He said, I myself am perfect. I will come down and I will take your punishment on myself on the cross. And so that's what he did, and I believe that. I can't prove that. That's why Christianity is a religion, and we admit ours is a religion.
How does God killing himself solve anything? I mean, why can't he just say, I forgive everybody? Why does blood have to come into this?
Yeah, that's a good question. There have been many theologians who pondered that over the centuries. I'm sure somebody's written some books on that, but I don't know. I can just say that's what the Bible says. Without the shedding of blood, there is no remission.
But isn't the answer obvious? It's because basically it's fulfillment of the Old Testament, and that's what Moses set up. And then the question is, why would Moses do it? And it's just because, well, there was an ancient idea that if things are bad, the gods are angry with us, so we have to sacrifice an animal or a firstborn or something. You know, in the Old Testament, it talks about Molech, and they used to sacrifice kids, and God even says in Jeremiah, I believe, that, you know, this is detestable, something I never even thought of, and yet here in the New Testament, it's like, I'm sending my son. It's like...
Well, I think you're looking at it a different way than I would look at it. When Adam and Eve sinned and disobeyed God, they made themselves, aprons of fig leaves. God killed something. We assume an innocent lamb, but we don't know that. But he killed a lamb and made them coats of skins. All right, I'm going to stop this really quick just to point something out. I want to make sure I don't forget it. The atheist on this video clip knows the Bible and knows the gospel and knows the theology behind it better than the man who claims to have been a Christian for 50 years. And God's teaching them that the wages of sin, the cost of sin is very high. Something has to die. Only a sacrifice will satisfy God. Now, why? I don't know. Take that up with God. But I'm just telling you that's what he said in his book, and I believe that. And Jesus Christ was God himself in the flesh and came down to be the ultimate sacrifice, and I'm very grateful for that.
Okay.
And he promised those that receive him, he changes them on the inside. I became a new man 47 years ago when I received Christ as my Savior.
Okay. Yeah, so many questions on this. So
All right, guys, so you have seen it. An atheist knows the Bible better than Ken Hovind. I wonder if he's ever bothered to read through the entire Old Testament. I mean, a lot of these, like super King James only, we don't need to read the original languages. They're also kind of anti-Old Testament. All we need is the New Testament. Jesus came, changed everything. So I wonder if he's ever actually bothered to read them. I mean, I can't blame him. Deuteronomy and Numbers is probably the most boring book I've read. So I got when I read through the Bible. But I don't know. Yeah, I mean, the atheist guy basically said what I would have said. Jesus said he came to fulfill the law. And the law said that in order to forgive sins, something had to die. All right, so the next reason you should not listen to Ken Hovind is the fact he has no idea what science is. He doesn't know how to explain anything. and he doesn't know science at all. He does claim to have taught high school science or middle school science for many years, despite the fact he has no teaching credentials, and his degree is basically a joke. It was from a diploma mill. Here's his school. Now, he likes to claim that there are 6 different types of evolution. We'll look at the video in just a minute. But for those of you that aren't aware, here's the actual definition of evolution. It's a change in allele frequencies over successive generations. Now, you might be asking yourself, like I did at one point, what is an allele? Well, basically, your genes are always copying themselves, but they don't always copy perfectly. So a slight change in how a gene copies is an allele. And enough of those add up over successive generations, you're going to end up with animals, bacteria, plants, fungi that are slightly different, and enough slight changes is going to give you something completely different.
6 different meanings that I use to the word
video.
evolution. Cosmic evolution, the origin of time, space, matter. Where did time come from? Where did matter come from? Where did space come from? Okay, cosmic evolution, we talk about that in my seminar. Secondly,
okay, so where did time, space, and matter come from? Has nothing to do with a change in allele frequencies over successive generations. So it's not evolution, it's cosmology.
we have chemical evolution. Because if the Big Bang theory is true, it's not, by the way, it's dumb. It would only produce hydrogen and maybe some helium or lithium. Well, how do you get 92 naturally occurring elements plus synthetic ones? Theory of life's origin is chemical evolution. This is taught in the textbooks. Chemical evolution, chemical evolution, chemical evolution. So they have to answer, how do we get all these elements? You can't fuse past iron. So how do we get uranium, platinum, lead, and gold, and silver? They don't talk about it, but it is an essential step in evolution.
Well, forming hydrogen and helium has nothing to do with the change in allele frequencies over successive generations, does it? And if he actually knew anything about science, he would know that everything besides helium and hydrogen is produced in stars. That's where we got everything up to lead. Now, once you get to lead, you can't produce enough pressure in order to continue fusing things. And the only way to get things above lead is in a supernova explosion. So when stars collapse and form supernovas and novas, they give us everything else. Still not anything to do with biology.
Nothing exploding, which is dumb, to producing all the chemicals, which is dumb and doesn't happen. That's not science. But these are essential steps for the evolution theory. They gotta.
I'm going to pause real quick just to say, the Big Bang wasn't an explosion as anything, a Michael Bay movie, big boom, lots of fire, things get thrown all over. It was more a rapid expansion. And and the classic way most people think about it, including me, you have a tiny little point and then it expands. And it's still really hard for me to wrap my head around. But I want to say the current understanding, it's not even an expansion from a single point. It's kind of an expansion everywhere, into everything. I'll try to find an article about it I can throw up here, because it is kind of hard to wrap your brain around unless you're an astrophysicist or smarter than me. Doesn't take much thought. Let's keep going.
I have them. Then we'd have to have the stars and planets form. Nobody's ever seen that. It's called planetary evolution or stellar evolution. Nobody sees that. You can Google it. What is stellar evolution? We don't know how a single star managed to form. Why do stars evolve? They don't. We see them burn up is all we see. Stars are burning out. So planetary or stellar evolution is never been observed, but it's an essential part of their story because we're standing on one of the planets called Earth. But they don't have a way to explain stellar evolution. Do stars evolve? No one understands. They try to skip over it because there's no answer. Well, then you don't have a coherent theory. Get a new theory. Or quit making it be taught to the kids in school, that's for sure. Stars, we can go all day about stars. Fourthly, we have to have...
Now, one thing you might notice if you're a bit observant is that everything he's quoting is from like 1986, 1990. So you're talking almost 40 years ago that we haven't seen stars form. Well, we did stuff like made the James Webb Space Telescope, and guess what? We have observed stars forming. We know the basic idea of how stars form, and you don't need to know every single thing about how something works to have a general idea and know that it happens. I mean, I know that raw materials enter a factory, and at the other end, a product comes out. Do I need to know every single step of how a 1967 Ford Mustang is made to know that a 1967 Ford Mustang comes from a Ford factory? No, I don't. I just need to know that somebody smarter than me puts a bunch of stuff in it. Same thing. We don't need to know every single step to know how stars form. Very small matter collapses into a core. Fusion happens. Heat and light. If you understand that, you know how stars work.
Organic evolution. How did life get started? Life has to start somewhere. And the evolutionist thinks it started from the dust of the universe, which gradually cooled into an earth, and then was a hot ball of rock, and got rained on for millions of years and turned them into soup, and the soup came alive. Organic evolution is an essential part of their theory. Organic evolution. You can Google it. It's all over the internet. Organic evolution. Yes. It's not science. None of the first four are science. Nobody knows how lifeless chemicals evolved to a living cell from the primordial soup. This is what they teach the kids. I got a whole rack full of textbooks right here. I taught science 15 years. I'm sick of it. There's no such thing as primordial soup coming alive. It's imagination. They should keep their religion at home and not put it in the public schools.
Okay. So number one. All right. So number one, you might have noticed that he can't even keep his made up BS straight, because he's throwing his number 3, which is planetary evolution, into organic evolution. He goes back talking about how the Earth was formed. And once again, number 4, organic evolution, is not the theory of evolution. It's the theory of abiogenesis, which is how did life come from nothing. Because if you're going to accept that everything comes back to a common ancestor, unless you're some kind of theistic evolutionist that believes God threw the first thing on the ground and that evolved into everything, at one point something that was alive was not alive, it became alive. But it's still not a change in the allele frequencies over successive generations. So once again, here's Kent claiming to have taught science for 15 years, when in fact he taught Young Earth Creationist pseudoscience. That everything, the Earth just magically appeared out of nowhere. But when you look at everything, it doesn't appear. Okay? So why would we make, if everything did magically appear 6,000 years ago, don't you think the world's leading scientists didn't notice that?
Then there's macroevolution. Changes to another kind of animal. Nobody's ever seen that one. Nobody's ever seen a dog produce a non-dog or a cow produce a non-cow. Never. So it's imagination. Macroevolution. So all we've ever seen is variations within the same kind. That's all. Now that's sometimes called microevolution. That one, I believe that happens. But I think it's limited. It's going to be the same kind. And you're not going to get anything other than a dog out of the dog.
So, macroevolution and microevolution, the only people that put a difference between those two are the Young Earth and possibly other creationists that don't believe in the theory of evolution. People that accept evolution as the explanation for how everything came about, they don't differentiate between the two, because if you can walk a mile and you walk a mile 100 times, you've now walked 100 miles. So if you accept the fact that things change enough to be called different, slightly different things, then theoretically you can accept the fact that given enough time, small changes add up to very large changes. another thing to throw in here, and we'll actually cover this in just a minute, look at another video. What is a kind? Kent Hovind has never defined what a kind is. The only people I've really actually successfully heard define a kind are people who accept evolution. Clint's Reptiles. He actually has a pretty cool channel. He talks a lot about evolution. He's a Christian. And he has actually made what's called a steelman, the best explanation for your opponent's position. And he's actually really successfully defined a kind, in my opinion. But I've never actually heard a Young Earth Creationist do it. So what is a kind? Evolution never really states a cow will give birth to a non-cow or a dog will give birth to a non-dog. It states that things change slightly over every generation to where at one point we're going to no longer define that thing as when it started. A couple explanations, and these actually came from a guy named Clement Peterson. He actually is not a Christian, so your mileage may vary depending on your personal viewpoint, people watching this. But he explained it in two different ways that makes sense. So Portuguese came from Latin, but every single person born is speaking the same language as their parents, but with maybe some slight changes. So at no point did a Latin speaker give birth to a Portuguese speaker. But at what point did Latin become Portuguese? Or it's commonly accepted, even actually with creationists, I believe, that dogs came from wolves. Now, did a wolf ever give birth to a Chihuahua? No. But at one, where do you say this dog is, or this creature is no longer a wolf? It's a Chihuahua. It's not really a single point. It's a progress from wolf to dog to different dog breeds to eventually Chihuahua. All right, so Kent Hovind, like I said before, has never actually defined what a kind is. So let's look at this video. Now I have edited this video just to get to the point, but here we go. This is Kent Hovind defining a kind.
We cannot accept the idea that man evolved from other animals. There is no evidence anywhere in the world of any animal producing anything other than its kind. But they accuse me of not knowing science or ignoring problems with identifying kinds in the Bible. Anyway, what is a kind? Okay, Aaron, you interrupted me 288 times, so I'll try to explain it one more time. This is stuff I showed you that night, and I'll show Ross now. There are two varieties. I use the word kind kind of loosely. There are two varieties of squirrels that live on opposite sides of the Grand Canyon. Kaibab squirrel and the Abert squirrel. They probably had a common ancestor. There are 200 varieties of squirrels. Actually, there are 200 species of squirrels in the world, according to National Pornographic. 200 species. It's called the squirrel kind. Okay, you're 5. Would you say this animal and this animal and this animal are the same kind of animal?
Yes, no.
No.
So these are called the horse kind, Ross and Aaron. I'm trying to help you now. These are the same kind of animal. They're not a squirrel. They're not a pine tree. They're not a whale, okay? I think it's pretty obvious it's the same kind.
All right, so you heard it directly from Ken. A kind is a kind, and we know what a kind is because animals are the same kind. That's his definition, basically. A couple problems with that. There are a lot of animals that look alike that would be the same kind, according to Ken Hovind, that are not genetically similar. And there's a lot of animals that are genetically similar that don't look alike at all. I mean, if you were to show that 5-year-old a picture of a gray wolf and a toy poodle instead of the same kind of animal, the kid would probably say no. But both Young Earth Creationists and non-Young Creationists will say they're basically the same species. And sometimes they'll say different species, Canis lupus and Canis familiaris. Canis lupus familiaris. But they're both canids, and dogs came from wolves, so they're the same species, same kind. Alright, let's move on. So, did not define a kind. He basically knows nothing about the Big Bang. He keeps calling it the dumbest thing ever. But if you were to ask him to actually explain what it is, he's going to say nothing exploded, which isn't true. Alright, so we're going to join Kent Hovind once again, telling a story about meeting a professor. Now, considering the fact that Kent Hovind basically is a professional liar and thinks it's okay to lie for Jesus, I don't think this story ever took place, especially since a lot of what the professor supposedly says sounds a lot like Kent Hovind's misunderstandings of science and Big Bang. But that's just the background. So let's look at it right here.
I said, you tell me about your Big Bang, and then I'll tell you about my Big Bang. And so the professor took off on one of those answers that looked like it came straight from the textbook. He said, well, Mr. Hovind, I believe about 18 or 20 billion years ago. That's a long time. All the matter in the universe. That's a lot of stuff. By the way, the word universe comes from two Latin words, uni, which means single, and verse, which means a spoken sentence.
Alright, so here's one thing Kent likes to do also, make stuff up and pull it out of his brain. The word universe does not mean a single verse, a spoken sentence, at all. Alright, so you can see here from Google, universe, origin is Latin, late Middle English from Old French, universe, universe, or Latin universum, neuter of universus, combined into one. From uni, one, and versus, turn. So no, it's not a single spoken sentence. It's referring to the fact that everything combines into one thing, the universe.
Sentence. God said, let there be. Now that'll preach, man. There's a sermon in there someplace right there, okay? And if your pastor can't find it, he ain't got no preach in him at all, okay?
Well, if my pastor can't find it, it's because my pastor actually knows something more than English. And also, I just wanted to go back again before we continue. Once again, okay, so this video is quite a bit older. You can notice he looks quite a bit younger. But you might also notice that no matter whether he's young or old, he's using the same sentence, 20, 30-year-old sentence. And my understanding is that whatever there was before the Big Bang happened wasn't necessarily all the matter that we see now, or all of the original helium and hydrogen that were compressed into one. Not so much matter was compressed into one, but all of the energy that now makes up the universe was compressed into one, and that energy became matter after a few 100,000 years after everything cooled down and started forming matter. Because Einstein said that energy and mass, but basically energy and matter, are the same thing. Let's continue.
Universe was concentrated into one very dense, very hot region that may have been much smaller than a period on this page. Everything in the universe squished into a dot smaller than a period on a page? Wow. That's one crowded dot. And heavy, too. Hey, and it ain't the first time it happened, boys and girls. This textbook says, someday after many billions of years, all the matter and energy will once again be packed into a small area, no larger than the period at the end of this sentence. Then another Big Bang will occur. It happens every 80 to 100 billion years. This textbook author was brilliant. I could not believe how smart this guy was. He said, boys and girls, nothing really means nothing. You have to be at least that smart to write a book. He said not only matter and energy would disappear, but also space and time. However, physicists theorized that from the state of nothingness, the universe began in a gigantic explosion. What? Yes, boys and girls, you see, one day nothing exploded. And here we are.
Okay. Now, I'm not going to fault people too much for describing the universe, the Big Bang, as an explosion. But you got to realize, when you're writing a book for children, for young adults, for teenagers, it does help to simplify it a little bit. So, I mean, you can think of it as an explosion, but it's more a rapid expansion. It's not setting off a firecracker. Think about hooking a balloon up to an air compressor hose, and boom, the thing's going to go from being a wadded up little piece of rubber to a giant balloon in a very small amount of time. That's what we're talking about.
We could spend 3 days talking about the Big Bang Theory. They used to say the thing that exploded was a few light years in diameter. Then they said, oh no, it's only 275 million miles. And they said, oh no, it's only 71 million miles. They keep getting smaller, and now they're saying nothing exploded. Wow, Discover Magazine here a couple years.
So yeah, you know, science gathers information. It finds new evidence. It considers new theories, and it adjusts itself as it learns more. Kent Hovind has been using the same tired talking points for 50 years. Which one do you think is better? And also, physics breaks down before the Big Bang happened, so it's not really easy to describe what happened before we have physical laws to describe this.
Where did everything come from? Boys and girls, the universe burst into something from absolutely nothing. Zero, nada. As it got bigger, it became filled with even more stuff that came from absolutely nowhere. How is that possible? Ask Alan Guth. His theory will explain everything. Why?
Well, you know, if you actually bother to learn about science in the last 50 years, and once again, this is way above my wheelhouse. I can't really understand or explain it super well. But quantum physicists, people that study things that are very, very, very small, you might recognize quantum from the quantum realm MCU. Yes, I am a bit of a geek. But people who actually study this for a living will tell you that nothingness is unstable, and that basically nature doesn't like nothingness and will form something to fill in the nothing. It sounds crazy, but there's a lot of science behind it. Again, I'll try to find something to link it to, something I've read before.
Guth guy. Alan Guth said in Scientific American, the observable universe could have evolved from an infinitesimal region. In the Hebrew, that's a dot. He said it's then tempting to go one step further and speculate that the entire universe evolved from literally nothing.
I, for one, am not going to believe that Kent Hovind knows one word in Hebrew, considering he doesn't know Yahweh, which, if he claims something comes from something, don't believe him at all, because he's knowingly just pulling stuff out of his way.
It came from a dot, and the dot came from nothing. And they call that science? And
well, you believe that everything was created ex nihilo in 6 days, 6,000 years ago, and you call that science. Because you claim to have taught science, and that's probably the only thing that you taught.
I think I'd call that a fairy tale and put it in the garbage. I said, Professor, what happened to your dot? He said, well, over 20 billion years ago, all the dirt in the solar system was drawn into this little bitty tiny dot, and it was spinning. It spun faster and faster, and all of a sudden, it exploded, Big Bang. And
no, that is 100% not what the Big Bang says, which is why I think this story is completely, utterly made up. No, I will give the fact that this video is obviously a lot older, so we won't nitpick on the amount of time, because A long time ago, people actually didn't really know how the universe was. They had to get better at measuring stuff. So they, at different points, they did say 20 to 40 billion, or maybe 5 to 15 billion. They had a pretty big range, but now they've gotten it down to around 13.8 plus or minus a few million, 200 million years, which is a lot better than a few hundred billion years. But no, the Big Bang Theory does not say that all of the dirt in the universe gathered up and exploded. It says at one point we can't describe what happened because everything is very, very small in physics breaks down. And once again, it did not explode.
Galaxies and sun, moon, stars, and here we are, people, nothing but stardust. I said, sir, can I ask you a couple questions, please? He said, sure. What do you want to know? We got a 3-hour flight sitting that far away from each other on the airplane. And I said, well, sir, I got a question. You said 20 billion years ago, all the dirt got together for the big squish and the big spin and the big bang. Where did all the dirt come from? Who made matter? He said, we don't know that for sure. The professor said he did not know where the matter came from. I said, well, sir, could you tell me where the laws came from? This universe is run by laws. Gravity, centrifugal force, inertia, Boyle's law, Cole's law. You can eat that with potato salad. Okay. There's all kinds of laws in the universe. Where did the laws come from? And by the way, why aren't the laws still evolving? Do you ever think about that? All
right, so I will admit, too, that, where did the laws come from? Who knows? It's a fundamental part of the universe. It's basically the only reason stuff stuck around long enough to make the first stars. My personal answer is God. The Big Bang to me was the way he made it. That's what Hovind's going to say, and it's one of the very few times I'm going to admit to something that comes out of his mouth. But to answer the second question, why aren't the laws evolving? Well, if they did, how would we have everything? If gravity was 9.8 meters per second squared today and was 100 meters per second squared tomorrow, life wouldn't be able to exist. The only reason that we have life in the universe or a universe is the fact that the laws are constant. Other things may change. Stars are born, stars die. Planets are born, planets die. But the laws stay constant. That's why we have it.
Same. Why don't you weigh 10 pounds more one day? See, if a spinning object breaks apart, the pieces that fly off are going to spin the same direction because the outside's moving faster than the inside. And we could talk all day about the conservation laws if you'd like, but the professor said, yes, I know about the conservation laws. I said, well, good, sir. Then let me ask you a question. If the universe began as a spinning dot, like you said, why do 2 planets spin backwards, and probably 3? He got real quiet, puzzled look on his face. I said, sir, why do 8 out of 91 known moons spin backwards? Why do Jupiter, Saturn, and Neptune have moons going both directions at the same time? Why is the sun 98% hydrogen?
Okay, let's stop a bit. I've covered this before in a couple other videos, but scientists theorize that possibly the reason some planets spin backwards is they got hit by something even bigger. I will throw up, if I can find them, some links to Talk Origins. Basically, it's a website that develops Young Earth Creationism, and I think they explained it in there. I think I used it in a different video. As to why some moons are spinning backwards, I'm probably going to say the same thing. Maybe something got hit on the way, or the fact that they're orbiting stuff with gigantic gravity that might just cause it to spin a different way, or orbit a different way. If it's coming in a different direction, it's going to get caught in gravity, and it's going to get slung around differently than other stuff.
Their planets are less than 1% hydrogen and helium. And why are these 9?
Okay, so why is the sun made mostly of hydrogen and helium, and why are the planet we live on in the inner solar system not? Well, because they're made of stuff that's not hydrogen. I think even a 5-year-old could figure that out. If you gave him a ball of mud and said, this is what Earth is made of, he's going to be able to figure that out. You go farther out, Saturn, Jupiter, Pluto, So, they're made of gas because they had less stuff. They're farther away. If I were to take a handful of candy and throw it straight up in the air, straight up but slightly up, sorry. If I were to take a handful of candy and throw it mostly straight up in the air, but kind of slightly outwards, most of it's going to fall close to me, but some of it's going to fall farther away. Think of like a kid hitting a pinata when it breaks.
Each other. If it all came from a Big Bang, I mean, why are they all so different? Very different compositions. And why do some whole galaxies spin backwards? I said,
again, why are some planets different? Because they had different things to get made out of as they were formed. Why do some galaxies spin backwards? Actually, I'm not sure. Let's look it up. Galaxies that have been recently merged with or been disturbed by another galaxy can sometimes rotate with their spiral and bleeding. Okay, so there you go. That was easy.
backwards? He said, I don't know. Why do you think they're going backwards? I was hoping he was going to ask that. I said, sir, it's real simple. You see, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth, and God did it that way on purpose just to make the Big Bang Theory look stupid.
Okay, so I just want to say a couple things. Number one, you don't have to know everything about something to know something about something. So we can know that the Big Bang happened, but we don't have to know step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 100, 200, 500, 7,000. If we know, say we have 20 steps, if we know steps 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10, that can be good enough. And number two, I don't know is an acceptable answer in science. As long as you follow that up with, but we're investigating it to figure out why. That's why we have cosmologists and astrophysicists and quantum physicists and all kinds of smart people. I can guarantee you in the 20 to 30 years since this video was originally posted, that a lot of what he's asking, even if the story isn't made up, it's been answered. I just Googled something in 5 minutes, 5 seconds to answer one of the questions. So as long as you continue to investigate, I don't know is an acceptable answer. And also, the Big Bang, God did something to make the Big Bang move stupid, then why did he do it in the way that led people to believe in the Big Bang? Is the devil messing with everyone's minds, planting evidence to make people hate God? Or did God create everything 6,000 years ago in 6 days, but did it in the way that made it look like the Big Bang? Test with faith? I mean, either way, there's the bad outlook on theology of God and
Big Bang, because the Bible teaches the Big Bang. It says, the heavens shall pass away with a great noise. In the original Greek, that's a Big Bang.
Okay, once again, anytime he says in the original Greek, and I did look it up, it came up to be like a loud noise. Let me see if I can find it. So, Horizedon, I'm going to say that wrong. Horizedon is an adverb, which means with a great noise, with a loud noise, a crash, a great noise. To make a confused noise with a loud noise. So, is that a Big Bang? I don't know. I'll leave it up to you. Alright, let's look at what he thinks about dinosaurs.
Dinosaurs lived during the time of Adam and Eve. God made everything in 6 days. Reptiles never stopped growing. And the Bible says before the flood came, the people lived to be 900 years old. What would happen to a lizard if he could live to be 900? He'd get really big. Okay, this is the age of dinosaurs, not millions of years ago. Then Noah took them on the ark, probably babies. Noah was 600 when he built the boat. He'd be smart enough to know you don't need big ones. Bring babies of everything. Why would you bring big elephants? Bring 2 babies. They eat less, they sleep more, they poop less, they're tougher, they take up less space. After the flood, they live longer to produce more babies, and that's why you're bringing them. I think he brought babies of everything. But yes, dinosaurs were it was Adam and Eve. They were on the ark with Noah. After the flood, many died from the new climate change. They couldn't live long enough to reproduce, and some were hunted to extinction by man. They called them dragons. But there might be some still alive.
All right, despite his claims, dinosaurs are not lizards, even though the name means terrible lizards. Dinosaurs walk upright, have different hip sockets than lizards and other reptiles. Lizards' legs are parallel to the ground and do not walk upright. They walk almost on their belly. So apparently Kent has not studied science since the 1800s. So, I covered this in a previous video, and I actually learned this from another person who developed Young Earth Creationism. If you take babies and raise them alone without an adult present, they turn out horrible. So no, the answer to the ark is not just taking on babies, because they're not going to grow up correctly. All right. Kent Hovind also is very bad at the idea that there's observational and historical science. So they believe that the only way to truly do science is if you can directly observe something happen. So they don't believe in the Big Bang because you can't watch the Big Bang happen. Therefore, to them, it's not science. It's historical science. But that is absolute BS. There's no difference between observational and historical science. There's just science. Science is basically observing the natural world and learning something from it. Very basic definition, probably didn't catch everything, but that's what I'm going to stick with. So according to them, if you didn't directly observe somebody murdering another person, you can't scientifically prove who killed him. Despite the fact that you might have text messages from that person stating, I'm angry at this guy, I'm going to kill him. Then you have video evidence of them going to their house. Then you have fingerprints on a knife that was found near the body. You have forensic evidence showing that the wounds received by the person were from the knife sitting next to their body. But because you don't have a videotape or a guy standing next to them watching it happen, it never happened. It's total BS. All right. So even a lot of other Young Earth creationists are against many of his beliefs. AIG, actually from Genesis, actually posted an article about arguments not to make, and most of the stuff on there, a lot of it, was stuff that Kent Hovind said. Because Kent Hovind actually somewhat learned, or maybe he just realized nobody was listening to him, and so finally still believes all of this stuff that he's spewing. AIG actually did edit the article, but they're not very much. They're pretty much not friends. Kent's kind of an outlier in the answers. Sorry, Kent is kind of an outlier in the Young Earth Creationist field. If you've watched any of Kent's videos, you'll often hear him refer to himself as Dr. Dino because of his PhD in Christian education. Now, I have actually read his thesis, despite the fact it's very difficult to find, which tells you something about it. If a person actually spent the years and years it takes to research and write out a PhD thesis, they publish it for everyone to find. That's the point in becoming a doctor, getting a doctorate degree, is that you're adding to the body of knowledge in a certain subject, and you want people to know them. If you're hiding it, it's because you know you spent $2,000 to get a degree from a diploma mill. Once again, here's where he got his degree from, the Patriot Bible Institute. It's a trailer in the middle of the desert. It's not a real school. Now, if you actually read through his dissertation, I can't even call it a dissertation or a thesis. Basically, what happened was Kent Hovind was writing a book, a very poorly thought out research book, about why evolution bad, why you see good. And without even finishing a rough draft, it was still a rough draft of the book. He sent that in to be published as a thesis, was accepted because the only thing this place cares about is money, and now he gets to call himself supposedly a doctor. It's not even as good as like a third grade book before. It is horrible. All right. So, one of the biggest reasons I'm anti-Kent Hovind in making this video is he promotes the belief that Christian equals Young Earth Creationist fundamentalism, and that everything else is evolution and atheism. Never mind the fact that tons and tons of people believe differently than him and are still Christians. Never mind the fact that a lot of people will accept the order of the universe and still be Christians, and also accept evolution as the origin of life and still be Christians. So just because something is evolutionary does not mean it's atheist, but he promotes that belief. And there's a big problem with that. The biggest problem is that when you tell people that you can either believe in the Bible and a Young Earth Creationist mindset of the Bible, or you can believe in the evil science and that science is anti-God, when kids grow up and go to university and learn that that's all a bunch of BS and that science is correct, then they just assume, well, then that must mean that the Bible isn't true and I don't have to believe in this stupid religion anymore. And they leave the faith. I've watched a lot of deconstruction videos, and that number one most of the time is the reason why people say that they have left the faith and no longer believe, because science is real, so therefore the Bible must be wrong. Because they've been taught a dichotomy. One is true, one is false. And I don't think anyone should ever do anything that is going to drive people away from the church. You should be driving people towards the church. You should be telling people that unless it's like some kind of documented heresy, like saying, well, I believe in evolution and Jesus wasn't God, then most of the differences in beliefs are minor and it doesn't matter. And also, it keeps people out of the church, because why do you want to join a religion? Why do you want to consider a religion? Why do you even want to step foot in a church if you are believing that you have to check your brains at the door in order to get in? I wouldn't. He also repeatedly claims that evolution is a religion, is the dumbest religion. Alright, so a religion, a belief in and worship of a superhuman power or powers, especially a god of gods. Who's the god of evolution? It's not Darwin. If you took everything Darwin published and threw it away and stopped believing in it, there would still be enough evidence pointing towards evolution being the reason why there's a lot of a pursuit or an interest with something that describes supreme importance. So I guess you could throw that in there, but I mean, most people don't say religion in that way. They're saying religion in the first definition, a system of faith. And despite what Kent says, you have to have faith to believe that humans came from ancient primates. There's more scientific evidence for that than anything we believe in.
You want to believe, not accept, believe in evolution. That is your business. But it is a religion in every sense of the word.
So there you go. Just so that I'm not making stuff up. And actually, he doesn't really understand evolution that well at all.
Every farmer in the history of the world counts on evolution not happening. They count on it.
I don't know where he got that from, other than he seems to think that a cow can give birth to a dinosaur, and that's why farmers are counting on it. As part of a larger discussion of cows give birth to cows and horses give birth to horses, and bananas reproduce bananas after its own time. But no, farmers don't count on evolution not happening. They count on evolution happening. Now, if Kent actually understood what evolution is and what it means, he would know that artificial selection is evolution, because it's a change in allele frequencies over successive generations. So farmers absolutely count on evolution happening because they want the very best seed, they want the very best plant, and they want the very best animal, the cow that makes the most amount of milk, the sheep that can produce a lot of wool, corn that will grow twice as much ears of corn than previous generations have. So yeah, no idea what he's talking about. Okay, let's get back on that. In conclusion, don't listen to Ken Hovind because he knows absolutely nothing about science. He knows nothing about the Bible, and he knows nothing about the God that he claims to worship. He peddles a false theology. He peddles a false science. And in my opinion, he does more damage to Christianity than any person else. I hope you like this video. It's my first try at something kind of big, trying to take down video. I watched quite a lot. I just wanted to, throw my opinion out there.